I started working on what used to be called the upright moviola, which is a machine, editing machine that looks something like a green sewing machine on legs. I switched to computer editing in the mid-90s. The editor has to be, he's sort of the ombudsman for the audience. As an editor, you only see what is on the screen, not what was going on at the time of shooting. And that's how it's going to look to the audience. I make it a principle not to go on the set, not to see the actors out of costume, not to see anything other than the images that come to me from location. This is the first thing in that I'm standing up, which allows me a considerable amount of freedom of movement, and it also means that I'm sprung. I guess is the only word for it. And frequently when I'm looking at the cut, I will stand here with my hand on the controls, almost like a gunslinger, and trying to hit the point of the cut with my knees bent. And somehow this is important for me because it allows me to internalize the rhythms, the visual rhythms of what's happening. At this point, we've started with a blank slate. So the question is, what are we going to start with? That looks like a good possibility. It establishes things. So there's Anthony saying action, and they start to come forward. We could begin it anywhere in here, but see, there now somebody falls right here, and that's good. Falling is good. We will edit this shot into the timeline, and there it is. In the end, there will be probably 5,000 shots in the film, and all of them have to be ultimately be the right shot in the right place for the right length of time. There's a mismatch here, and I'm going to have to determine whether this is a problem or not, because Brown is looking toward camera, but when we cut, he's looking up off to the left. We can have Jeremy come in and cut so that Jeremy's head is masking Brown's head, so that the mismatch is not seen. And now I'm going to mark this frame, and I'm going to get rid of this area, which is 3 frames. And now I'm going to look at it in context and see how it looks. Good. You have to have the personality that enjoys that it's almost like making little pieces of jewelry, that patience of the individual shots and how they're crafted together. But at the same time, you have to have an appreciation for the larger picture and how these shots fit into the larger picture of the scene, and then how the scene fits into the larger picture of the sequence, and how the sequence fits together with the larger picture of the whole work, and then how the work fits together with society. So it's a boxes within boxes within boxes. You now needed an industrial system to make this all work. In the first 20, 25, 30 years of cinema, large numbers of editors were women. It was considered to be a woman's job because it was something like knitting, it was something like tapestry, sewing, that you took these pieces of fabric, which is what film are, and you put them together. It was when sound came in that the men began to infiltrate the ranks of the editors, because sound was somehow electrical. It was technical. It was no longer knitting. Another way of looking at film editing is that it's a dance of eyes. Philip Seymour Hoffman's eye is looking. So that's a good thing. Now let's cut to a close-up of Hoffman looking, and the close-up of Hoffman is here. We've never seen this angle before, so the brain has to figure out what it's looking at and maybe why it's looking at it. And to the degree that you hold shots a certain length, you allow a certain train of thoughts to happen. When you cut a shot off, you've also cut off the thinking about that shot. Now, we want to cut to what he sees, because that's how we're going to understand what he's thinking about. Now, there you see him thinking, and then his eye goes down. So we run that at speed. Flinch, point of view, thinking, other co-conspirator. Let's do it now. What? Let's go. Oh, something's up. Let's don't do it. And we go. There's something about film, because of its sensory completeness, the fact that it is sound and image in this powerful fusion, that gets at something very deep within us. One of the things you have to develop as an editor is a very strong intuition about where is their attention. And under most ordinary circumstances, you're carrying that attention around without doing violence to it. It's like a cup that you're full of liquid that you're carrying, and I don't want to spill anything. And as a result, people feel the invisibility of what you're doing. But a lot of what a director does is what the immune system of the organism does, which is to say, yes, that's good, I will allow this to come into the body. Or, no, that's a different blood type, I don't want that to come in. So they're going up, trying to get away from him before he catches them. Then the cavalry come around the corner. And Vesey, the Philip Seymour Hoffman character, realizes that his only chance now is to yell, and maybe the Northerners will shoot the home guard. And Brown shoots him in the back, shoots one of the other guys, and they all roll down the hill. Then Brown gets shot. And the last image is of Inman, our hero, in this pile of bodies. We don't know whether he's dead or what. The opening scene of Apocalypse is a good example of what you can achieve editorially that is not based on the original script. There were some collisions of images that occurred to Francis as he was shooting the film that were at variance with how he had planned to begin the film originally. There was a shot of jungle bursting into slow motion flames with helicopters flying at odd angles in slow motion through the frame. And when Francis saw that shot in dailies, which was, I think, simply done to record this explosion. It wasn't intended to use it in the finished film. But he looked at it and said, that's the film right there. This jungle, flames, helicopters. Willard punches the mirror, blood comes out of his hand. All of this is really happening. That's real blood. That's Marty Sheen. None of that was intended to happen. That was just Francis saying, Marty, let's shoot an improvisation with you trapped in your room and what is going to happen. Going through the dailies of the film, I collected a number of images of the Cambodian heads, burning images from the end, and worked them in through a series of multi-level dissolves with the burning napalm and the helicopters flying through, and then images of Willard's room and Willard asleep, and he's trapped in this nightmare. You have been hearing helicopter sounds, and now you see this ceiling fan, and what you're hearing is the whap, 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 whap sound of a helicopter. Is that coming from his dream? Is it a reality? Is somehow that sound coming from the fan? I remember when I was assembling those images, almost jumping away from the editing machine when I put that sound with that image, because it seemed to me that that fan was making that sound. even though I knew it was impossible. And if it was convincing me who was doing it, it surely would convince others. Now they begin to coalesce, and they turn into a real helicopter coming from a fan. No. And then you hear a real helicopter fly over the room. Willard gets up out of bed, goes over to the window, and says,
Saigon. Shit.
All of that, the narration and the helicopter flying over and the napalm jungle, is concocted into something that is a powerful beginning to a film, not only powerful in and of itself, but powerful in the way that it sets the stage for the journey that this particular film is going to take.